Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag. From the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we are back this week. Last Monday we ended up not having a show. I kind of had to make the call as to whether or not we were going to do it by about 2 o'clock. And at about 2 o'clock at my house, it was basically raining ice. And I know you could have made it to the studio, but I wasn't sure I could. But by 4 o'clock, I looked up, and I'm like, okay, I could have gotten in.
Well, I mean, it was a couple of rough days last week.
Yeah, I mean, Thursday was not a lot of fun whatsoever,
right.
At least for me personally.
Monday night
was pretty bad. And in effect, it ended up canceling all the games last week until some games were played Saturday. So, basically we kind of get to talk about the week that that wasn't and the week that was before it. So we didn't really miss anything, when it basically breaks down. And so we're going to talk about the games that were played Saturday. We're going to start out talking about boys basketball because one interesting thing happened on Saturday. Ethan Harlow, Glasgow's only boys senior basketball player, finally got to play in a game, and it was senior night for him. He broke his hand in practice before the season, or hurt his hand. I'm not sure if it was broken, but he was out for the whole of the season until Saturday, and they needed him. The other thing that happened for them was Brendan Short came back, who he had gotten injured a couple of weeks before in a game against Metcalfe County, and that was the first game they played all year where they actually had everybody they expected to have, I think, at the start of the season, John. Yeah,
and both Ethan Harlow, first game back, had 12 points, and Brennan Short, who's been missing, had 12 points. So, so it's not only did they come back, they obviously made big contributions. And I didn't get to see the game, but I think you were there, and it was a pretty exciting victory, kind of a comeback victory late in the game against Logan, 76-73 in overtime. That kind of got wild there at the end. With a missed dunk by Anthony Woodard, who really, if he would have laid it in, would have probably iced the game.
It'd have been over with.
Yeah, it was a 4-point game with about 30 seconds to go, and he goes in and he misses. I think it's the second dunk he missed that night.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of going up 6, Glasgow got a long rebound, basically, because a missed dunk almost came all the way back to half court, and I think it was Sam Bowling got that rebound and made the pass to Jackson Poland. They scored, and Glasgow scored and cut to 2. And then I think Brendan Short stole the inbounds, assisted to Poland, tied it, and Glasgow proceeds to go on and gets a win in overtime. And when you're down 4 with 20 seconds to go, or potentially down 6 with if they made the shot, you probably win 1 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do, boy, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, that was one of those when they show you the probability of win percentage charts, like on ESPN and that kind of stuff, the website. With 20 seconds to go, it was probably at 1%, and which is a little bit, and then by the overtime, it's 99 or 100%, whichever way it works out. And also, Ethan Harlow got the layup in overtime to put them up. Poland had fouled out. Sam Bowling had the ball. Ethan broke baseline, and Sam just threaded it through the defense for the layup. That was the score that put them ahead to stay in overtime, and they had a free throw after that to set the final score. So it was a good return for Ethan. I talked to him after the game. He talked about the fact that he expected to be more winded than he was. Maybe the adrenaline kicked in for him, and he was pretty happy with his performance overall, and he should be. One of the things he gives them, which they have had problems with, is some size inside. He's a pretty tall kid, and he's got a good shooting stroke as well. And he has a couple of weeks basically to round into shape, and hopefully, they don't suffer any more injuries or that kind of thing. And that sets them up pretty well going into the district tournament, John.
Well, sure. That's they're 8-8, and they're 8-8, basically being shorthanded a lot of the year.
Yeah.
And now when you have Sam Bowling, who's really had a good year, he's probably averages 19, 20 points a game. Jackson Poland's had a good year, and then you throw in Harlow and Short, and I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah, they got Ashton Sawinski.
So the one thing that Glasgow can do is they can score.
Mm-hmm.
They've got really good balance in scoring and things like that. Brennan Short helps them, especially from the 3-point line.
Yeah,
and that makes them a very, not only a competitive team for the district to get out of the district, but also a dangerous team.
Yeah, and of course they'll be playing Barron County in the first round. Prior to Saturday, the last game they played was at Barron County. The Trojans came back and won that game. Glasgow looked like they had it. I mean, Glasgow has played well, especially in the first quarter, I think, in every game this season. One of the things going back to that shorthandedness that they've had, and I think this was evident in the game against Barron County on that Friday night prior to the snowstorms, was that they've worn down, and Barron just has enough people that they just keep coming, bringing in people, and Mason Griggs played well in that game, but also they bring in Aiden Miller and Eli Brooks and the two Stevens, Colton and Lane, and so they've been able to bring in enough depth with their starters that it's worn Glasgow down in that game.
Well, in that game, that's true. I mean, Glasgow jumped out to a pretty good-sized margin. And in fact, if I'm trying to recall, I think Glasgow has like a 6-point lead in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And Barron made a really nice comeback, and led by Mason Griggs. I mean, I think he had 22 that game, and he played really well down the stretch, like he has done pretty much all year right now. I mean, you look in the scoreboard, every time that Mason has played, basically the last 15 games, he's 20 or more. Mm-hmm. But that game, Aiden Miller kept Barron alive early
in the first half. Yeah.
He had 15 points, and Gavin Withrow, I think, ended up with 11. But Barron finally caught Glasgow, and then down the stretch, they made their free throws. I think they were 13 out of 17. But for much of that game, I think you could argue that Glasgow probably outplayed Barron.
Right.
But down the stretch, Barron made more plays, and maybe it's possible you're right. The depth may have made a factor in that game.
Yeah, to me, having seen Glasgow a few times through the season, that seems to be the thing that has affected them the most. They like I said, they've played well, I think, in the first quarter and the first half in a lot of games. A lot of times they come out and play pretty well in the third quarter. They've had a lot of games where they struggled in the fourth quarter, and I'm sure there are several reasons why that happens, but it seems to me that lack of depth may have been the biggest thing a lot of times. But that it sets up an interesting matchup in the 15th district, because we know it's a competitive game always in those district first-round games. And I'm sure neither coach will get much sleep before that game is played coming up next month.
Well, 3 weeks now.
Yeah, 3 weeks. March 15th is when they play, right? Yeah, March 15th is at Barron County is when the boys' district games start.
Yeah, I mean, it should be I don't think the Allen Monroe boys will be all that competitive, but yeah, the Glasgow Barron game, just like most times they play, it should be a good one.
Yeah,
no question about it.
Meanwhile, the Trojans played probably one of their best games of the season on Saturday against Apollo. I mean, they beat them handily. What was it, 73-31? I think was the final score.
Yeah, 73-31. I don't think I would have foreseen that type of a route. Now, Apollo hasn't played in like 20-something days, and they combined snow and COVID. They were, probably not in tip-top position, and they had one of their better players out too. But despite that, even if they had one of their better players out, that's a 42-point win by Barron in the Sports Center is pretty impressive.
Yeah,
and Barron has been impressive. They're 14-4. Mm-hmm. And that's with losing one of the best players in the region in the third game of the year at Aiden Eichen. And not only are they 14-4, they've won 11 out of the last 12. Mm-hmm. And they're just in that game against Apollo. I think Tay Pointer had 15 out of the first, I think, 20 points for Barron. He played at the end of the game. I think Tay had 24. Griggs again had 19. They had more points between them than Apollo did total.
Yeah, and
we're not talking about this as a 8th grade, 7th grade game. I mean, Apollo is a traditionally rich school who's had a decent season this year, but I tell you what, Barron put a pretty big hurt on them, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, Apollo is one of those programs that even when on their down years, a lot of times you expect them to be good,
right?
And competitive in their region, and they usually are, even in their down years. So when somebody from across the state looked at this final score, they must have first thought it was a misprint, because you just don't expect to see Apollo to be beaten like that, as you pointed out. But, I mean, Barron has been playing well, and they were off all those days, and it didn't affect them.
No,
it wasn't 23 days.
No,
but
23. The reason why I said that because Apollo had also been out with COVID too.
Right.
So you had the snow and the COVID, and I really think the snow may have helped Barron a little bit because they have not missed. I think they've had like one cancellation, and they've been on this three games a week deal, and I just thought at the end of that little streak. The win against Glasgow 54-52, which was right after the loss to South Warren.
Yeah.
And I just thought that Barron's may have been a little bit tired with their legs and so forth. And so when they missed practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, they did get in and get a little shooting in on Friday. That may have refreshed their legs because they shot the eyes out of it against Apollo, and that may have been really good for them.
Yeah, they shot like 65% in the game total. I think in 60% from three, right?
Right. And so, sometimes a little break, if it's at the right time and if it's for the right reason, can be productive. Obviously if it's for COVID, it's not because what COVID does, it completely quarantines you. I mean, you can't do anything.
Right.
But for the snow, you can still get out and do things if you have to, and maybe get to a gym if you can or whatever. So it's not as restrictive, and I just thought it gave Barron actually a refreshing of energy going into this last push of the year.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, so they have 3 games coming up this week? The Trojans do.
Yeah, they have. Let's see. I know they have South Warren is one of the nights.
That's Friday.
Yeah, it's Friday. I'm trying to go.
At Franklin Simpson tomorrow?
They got Franklin tomorrow, South Warren, and then there's somebody else on Saturday, and I've gone. I blame because the girls and guys do not.
I think the boys are hosting E-Town. No, the boys are
hosting E-Town on Saturday night.
Yeah, that's right, and they're hosting E-Town on Saturday night, which should be pretty interesting. E-Town beat Bowling Green a couple of weeks ago severely.
Yes, gave Bowling Green their only loss. Held Bowling Green at like 30 points.
Yeah, I think the final was like 62-33, something like that. It was pretty
and I instantly looked at the box score to see if Isaiah Mason or Boutry or those kids played, and they played.
Yeah. I think E-Town only has one loss so far this season. I don't remember who it was, but it may have been to like Doss or somebody like that. One of the top teams, I think, out of Louisville, may be their only loss this year.
Well, no, they're good. So is Bowling Green, yeah.
We were talking the week before that about Bowling Green being one of the better teams in the state.
I think they are, but they weren't that night.
No. That's Barron's schedule coming up this week. I was looking back real quick at this E-Town business. Yeah, the final score of that E-Town Bowling Green game was 64-36. And then their only loss was to actually they lost to John Hardin by 1. But I think John Hardin's pretty good this year too. Anyway, so yeah, that's what Barron has coming up this week. And meanwhile, the Scotties are returning to action this week as well. They play at Adair tomorrow, and then they play at Franklin Simpson on Thursday and host Southwestern on Friday. So they've got a pretty good stretch coming up here as well. The good thing for them, as we already pointed out, was Harlow and Short hopefully can get into some sort of rhythm over the next couple of weeks. Real quick, let's go back to the district tournament and kind of just talk about how this sets up. So people kind of know what to look forward to. The district tournament will be played at Barron County. All right, so on the boys' side, and we'll talk about the girls in the next segment as well. On the boys' side, Allen County and Monroe County play at 5:30 on March 15th.
That's a Monday.
And then 7:45, Barron County plays Glasgow. I think they're clearing the gym and cleaning the gym between games, which is why they're such a big stretch. Usually they would be an hour and a half or 2 hours, but this is 2 hours and 15 minutes is the way it works out. All right, and then the boys' championship will be Wednesday at 7 p.m., Wednesday, March 17th at 7 p.m. And, I think it'll be as usual. I think you're right. I think Allen County and the Monroe County matchup probably shouldn't be much of a game, just based on recent outcomes.
Well, I mean, Allen will definitely be the favorite, but again, this year is different.
Yeah.
With COVID,
who knows who will be playing?
That's exactly right. You just cross your, as a coach, boy, if you are really, really, I thought about this the other day. If you're really good and you think you have a chance to either to win your district or win your region or maybe you're a state title contender.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's got to be awful nervous. You always have nerves going into the game when it comes to district and region, but that nerve is based on are we going to play well enough to win?
Mm-hmm.
This is a different nerves in terms of are we going to be healthy enough to play?
Right.
And that would be frightening to me
right.
because a COVID case, and it just depends. Sometimes it depends on where you are. If you're in Louisville, they will. They're so strict in Louisville. I mean, you're wiped out for 2 weeks, and
mm-hmm.
it could be the. It could be the cousin of the of your manager, and that's going to knock you out. So it's a little bit different rules depending on where you are.
Mm-hmm.
But man, that would be if you're 1-in-25, I guess it is what it is. But man, if I had a good team, that would really be keep me up at night.
Yeah. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, sort of like the boys' basketball, the girls' basketball was off for a week as well. Didn't have any games until Saturday. And strangely enough, the Glasgow Lady Scotties kind of had a similar situation with Ansley Adwell. She had missed 3 weeks because of these snowstorms and I think some illness before that. But first, let's talk a little bit about the Trojanettes because they finally got to play on Saturday after being off since they had played Glasgow the Friday before that, Friday before that, and went over to Somerset, a game that was just added to the schedule, I think, on Thursday or something, or Wednesday. I mean, it was not originally on the schedule from what I recall, and won a nail-biter.
48-46, and yeah. I know nothing about it. I don't. I just know it's 48-46. It wasn't broadcast. I didn't go, and I wasn't around anyway. And so I'm not really for sure. I think it's our Barron's first win against out-of-region teams.
I believe so, because that's the fourth 12th region team they played, right? Third or fourth?
Well, they Pulaski and Casey and Somerset. I don't know.
So third. I guess that's the third. But correct. They had lost the other two.
That's correct. So they did get a win over at Somerset, so that part's good. And Barron is now, I think they're on a little bit of maybe a 5-game winning streak. They kind of went through a little tough stretch there, and I know their last 3 games they defeated Glasgow, Warren East in a really good game. The East game was a really good game.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about the East game.
And Somerset 48-46. Yeah. The East game was 53-47, and Warren East kind of looked like for 3 quarters sort of like the team that people maybe expected them to be a little bit.
Yeah.
And then Barron came roaring back and knocked them off, but led by, I think, Raven Ennis played well, 23. I had to give out a little shout to Emma Hughes, the lone senior on Barron's team, and she's kind of like she does a lot of little things well.
Yeah,
she's a player that doesn't oftentimes get a whole lot of the headlines. But she's a glue kid, and a player that, as a coach, I used to say I can trust her because she'll be in the right place. And she had 8 points, and she oftentimes guards some of the better players. Her and Katie Murphy are really good defensive players.
Yeah.
So I was happy to see that. Addison London had a good week. She played well against Glasgow in that win, too. She had 11 and 9 in those 2 games. So Barron is kind of they went for a while, and they really struggled to score trying to replace Macy Lockhart. But the last 3 games, they've got that, 53, 53, and 48 will beat a lot of teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned they were on a little 5-game win streak. I mean, that started with a good win over Warren Central all the way back on February 6th.
Yes.
A couple of games did not get played. The Clinton County game got canceled, so that was one that was supposed to be there. And then, of course, the Apollo, they were supposed to play Apollo Saturday originally up in Owensboro as well, but picked up the Somerset game instead. Apollo couldn't play. It's a little 5-game win streak. I think they've scored more than 50 points in 4 of those 5 games. The only exception was that Somerset win. And, talking about Emma Hughes, going back to that Warren East game, she had a couple of big plays in the fourth quarter. I think she had a big steal and a big offensive rebound against Warren East. which is hard to do against Warren East because they've got Caroline Forrester and
Lucy
Patterson. But, talking about Warren East and what they are looking like, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in the next section, it took them a long time to even get their season started, because of COVID issues, either within their program or teams they were supposed to play. They played a game against Glasgow, and then I think they went another week without playing earlier in the year. But you're right. They were looking a little bit more like the Warren East team we expected to see, and I think they continue to improve in that front. So those who might look at Warren East's record and say, well, that wasn't that great of a win, that's not exactly true. It's hard to measure Warren East at the moment. And I thought that was a bigger win for Barron than it probably looked like just on paper.
Especially without Macy Lockhart.
Yeah, especially without Macy Lockhart. So they're rounding into shape. They'll play Franklin Simpson tomorrow night at home. And then they are at South Warren, and South Warren is a hard team to kind of figure out.
Yeah, you're right. They play some head scratchers, to say the least.
Yeah.
It seems like they're talented enough at times where they play real well and knock off teams, and then they'll throw in a clunker right there. Yeah, so they're a hard team for me to kind of measure. To be honest with you, I think it's Bowling Green, and then East, Warren Central, and South Warren. East, Warren Central, Greenwood, and South Warren are all.
Yeah,
I think Greenwood may be a little bit ahead of them, but I worry about their depth and so forth. I still think Bowling Green, because the Bowling Green, he's playing a top 10 schedule.
Yeah,
I mean, he's got Bethlehem coming up Tuesday, who's probably the second best team in the state.
Right.
And I think Bowling Green's 8-7, but man, their schedule's been brutal.
Well, and again, we'll talk a little more about some of these fourth region teams. Back to this Barron County schedule, they get a chance at revenge for one of their losses earlier in the year. They play Breckenridge on Saturday at South Warren. I think that was originally Webster County on the schedule, but now they're going to be playing Breckenridge County.
Okay.
That's one of the teams that they had lost to during that little stretch where they were struggling. I think that was the first team that they had lost to during that stretch.
It was
and
at the Sports Center in Owensboro. Yeah,
yeah, and looked pretty rough in that game. And there was, I guess, probably some questions about. I think right there, that little stretch talking about Macy Lockhart and losing her. That was the little stretch where we realized the things that Lockhart did. We see points, but it's the rebounding and the defense and that kind of stuff that other people were going to have to try to step in and replace. So we get a chance to actually mark improvement, which doesn't usually happen, in a season, John.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, each teams should improve as the year goes on. That's normal, but it's hard to factor sometimes injuries. It's hard to factor COVID. Mm-hmm. It's hard to factor motivation sometimes.
Right.
And but there will be a chance to see. In a lot of ways, the second meeting against Breckenridge, assuming Breckenridge is the same team they were a month ago. Who knows?
Yeah, because the thing about Breckenridge a month ago was, they've got an experienced team, and that was the thing in that game that was obvious. That I felt like was an obvious difference between those programs.
Good guards too.
Yeah, good guards. Meanwhile, back to the Lady Scotties, as I mentioned, Ansley Adwell had missed 3 weeks. She hadn't played in 3 weeks. And Glasgow ended up only playing 3 games during that stretch with her out. They had beaten Caverna barely. They dodged a buzzer beater, basically, and then they lost a couple of games.
Lost to Barron.
Yeah, lost to Barron during that stretch. And, when your only senior is also your best player, just obviously your best player. She's signed to play Division I basketball at Bellarmine. That gap shows up, when they're out. But I think one of the positive things that came out of that is a player like Cadence Bird, who she had played, during the course of the year, but she hadn't started, that kind of thing. She started some games. She can really shoot the ball, and she's not a bad ball handler. She's not real quick or whatever, but she is quick with a basketball, and it's a great experience for her to kind of get out there on the floor. And the rest of the team is just very young. They have, I think, a couple of juniors, but it's mostly a bunch of sophomores that they have out there. So,
and some freshmen. Yep. And what Adwell does is she brings a physical strength to the team too.
Yeah.
She can get tough rebounds and so forth. And one of the things that Glasgow will do as the years go on is the kids will get individually stronger.
Right.
You know, I just watched them against Barron, and oftentimes a lot of the turnovers they made, they really struggled against Barron's pressure. But some turnovers were just basically not being strong enough. A pass that was not perfect, but it's a very catchable pass.
Yeah.
And if your hands aren't real strong at the time, you don't catch that.
Yeah, you fumble it or you just miss it.
It's exactly right. And those are little things that over maybe a year of maturity or strength training and things like that they should get better at, because they have some pieces in the program, but one of the things that for the Glasgow girls are going to have to get stronger and coach knows that too.
Yeah.
And it's not something you just can't get stronger in a month, and you don't get stronger during the season. That's an off-season program that they'll have to take a look at.
Yeah, I mean, because I thought Chloe Hale had improved her play
She
with
has.
Adwell out. I thought she played pretty well.
She's long.
Saturday night.
She's somebody that will put on strength, but she's got the size and she's long and she's got pretty good shooting form too.
Yeah. We know about Mia Cassidy. I mean, she shoots the ball well. Her ball handling will get better.
And she is strong.
She is strong.
That's exactly right. She's strong and has had a really good year too. Shot the ball real well.
Yep. And Janae Bradley is another one. I think she's just a sophomore.
Ashton Botts.
I mean, so they've got some players who are the downside of this year for Coach Pippen is that every game's a struggle. The upside is these young players
they're getting better. That's right. And part of their issue is ball handling, and he's been very open about that. But the one thing that happens if you have a work ethic, your ball handling oftentimes will get better because it's like a shark that smells blood in the water. If teams suspect that you don't handle the ball, everybody presses you.
Yeah.
Even teams that don't press you.
Right.
And you will either get better naturally because you're the experience of seeing it, and it's going to force you to get better. Especially if you're a guard and you have any pride in yourself, it's a miserable game if you can't handle the ball. And I think what you'll see and what you're beginning to see is their ball handling has gotten better as the year has gone on.
Yeah, I mean it's, and you know that's one thing about them is that even though they don't really have a dominant ball handler like they have had some in the past with Ellie Bartley or Bree Glover or even Ansley Adwell for that matter coming up, they do have a group of players who, as a unit, look like they can turn into better ball handlers. You know, they don't have any just straight stone hands. I think it's kind of what you mentioned to start with, just building that physical strength that they will develop. So, I mean, those are the positives for them going forward. Real quick, let's talk about the setup for the girls' district tournament. It starts March 16th. It's at Barron County. And at 5:30 on March 16th, that's Tuesday, the Barron County girls, who are the 1 seed, play Allen County Scottsville. And then, same thing, they'll clear the gym for cleaning and that kind of thing. And the second girls' game will be at 7:45. That is Glasgow versus Monroe County. And then on Thursday, March 18th, will be the girls' championship at 7 p.m. A few weeks ago, I more or less jokingly said that I thought Barron County was 30 points better than everybody in the district. At that particular point in time, everybody other than Barron was struggling in the district. This is really right at the time, I think, when Macy Lockhart got hurt. But they'd lost by 1 to E-Town on the night she got hurt. And they just looked like the more complete team, and everybody else had experience issues or just general things of that nature. But that gap is closed with Macy Lockhart out, and I do believe that both at Glasgow, Allen, and Monroe have all improved as the season's gone along.
Well, they have, and Allen was really getting better, and they had a little bit of a pause with COVID as well. I don't know if it was on their team or
who they were playing,
and then they got the double whammy. They got hit with the snow.
Right.
So I think Allen's gone a couple of weeks without playing, which, from a coaching perspective, is very disappointing because they were just starting to play well.
Yeah.
They were just starting offensively to score, and offense is timing.
Right.
And Allen's problems early in the years, they couldn't score.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they started getting that figured out, they started playing better and getting more confidence, and they've been shut down again. So it remains to be seen, can Allen can you restart your year twice in the same year? That's the issue.
Yeah,
because
really
because for Allen to compete against Barron, they're going to have to score.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard. You're not going to shut anybody out. But Allen played Barron very, very close over at Allen.
Yeah.
So that remains to be seen. In the Glasgow-Monroe County game, the last time Glasgow and Monroe girls played, Monroe blew Glasgow out.
Yeah, they had been off for 10 days just because they didn't have a game scheduled.
Now I don't
for 10
think
days.
Adwell didn't play.
No, she did.
She played that one. I didn't think she played that.
She
one.
did not start in that game, I don't believe.
Okay, but Monroe is clearly they've kind of. You look at them and you sometimes you think, well, athletically they should be better, but they've had some injuries too.
Mm-hmm.
A kid that's out with the ACL and so forth, and
yeah,
so,
Coach Pippen was not there for that game that night.
Okay,
and really that was the best I think I'd seen Monroe play probably in 2 years. I mean, they didn't miss a shot in that game, it didn't seem like. So, they have the capability, and they've got some players who are capable, but they just have not been consistent. I guess sort of like Allen in a way. They haven't been consistent, or I guess even Glasgow for that matter, or maybe even Barron. No one's really been consistent through the year in the 15th
Well, the district starts later than it's ever started.
Yeah.
But it's 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, I know. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, I guess we're going to give the best we can as a recap of how things are looking in the 4th region right now for boys and girls basketball. We'll start out on the girls' side.
All right.
We were talking earlier and wanted to save this some. We were talking earlier about South Warren and the difficulty of trying to figure them out because, I mean, they beat Warren Central, but they lost to Warren East, I think within the same week or within a week and a half of those two games. And we've already talked about the fact that Warren East is, they kind of got a delayed start. I think they had they got a delayed start, then they had another big break after they played their first couple of games. But they do have two players, especially in Lucy Patterson, offensively and defensively. I mean, she can do pretty much anything on the floor. So I think she's got to be one of the top players in the 4th region. And then Caroline Forrester, she scores some, but her biggest asset probably is defense and rebounding on the inside. But their outside shooting has been very inconsistent, and maybe that's just because of the lack of consistent playing. I mean, maybe that's the deal with them.
I guess. I mean, it's hard to judge teams this year. I would have thought Warren East would be one of the top 3 teams in the region coming into the year.
Yeah.
I know they lost some players, but when you start off with a good post player and a dynamic guard, that's a good combination.
Mm-hmm.
But in fairness to them, I'm just looking at it from a coaching perspective. If you're shut down 2 times and not allowed to play or practice, it's kind of hard to get better. It's hard to maintain conditioning, and it's hard to improve.
Yeah.
So I'm not really judging anybody, but what I do know, what I've seen so far is they've not quite played to the levels they played last year.
Right.
But those are reasons probably why. I'm not really into the excuse deal. Those are legitimate reasons. When you're shut down, not allowed to play and practice, that's a big time reason why you may not be where you are. And that district is I think you could argue out of the Bowling Green district, 5 out of the top 8 teams in the region.
Yeah. On any given night. But also,
you're going to have the top 8 in the region. I think you put Bowling Green number 1.
Uh-huh.
And then I think the next, anywhere from 2 through 8 are the next ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then you throw in Barron and possibly Russell County and
maybe Metcalf on some nights.
So it'd be your, but I'm pretty confident that 5 out of the top, maybe 9, are in that district.
Yeah. And but also conversely on that point is that of those other 4 teams, South Warren, Warren Central, Greenwood, and Warren East, I feel like as I watch those teams play, the only one I've not seen is South Warren. All right, but as I watch those teams play, basically you look at Greenwood, Warren East, and Warren Central. Those three teams all have a player who can dominate a game, at least offensively. I think the Jackson kid at Greenwood, she's a good offensive player. Well, she can put up points.
May not be as good as the other offensive player they have.
The Grant girl?
No,
Trin.
Trin.
Yeah, that's true. Well, maybe they have two.
They do.
But I'm not sure Trin can just get off her shot anytime. I feel like Jackson is a little more dynamic in what she can do. Maybe I don't know. But
I like her. I like Trin.
But definitely Lucy Patterson and Sanaya Shelton are can be dominant players.
Yeah, I don't know if Central has enough players.
I don't either. Plus, they're just erratic.
Yeah, I don't.
Mean, they still are.
When I say enough, enough would be 6. I mean, 5 or 6. And Central, when I saw them play Barron, they really struggled with their numbers. Shelton is really good.
Yeah.
And maybe they have some players out or whatever, but I think they have some depth issues. They may have depth issues even in their starting lineup.
Right.
Greenwood was the most balanced team that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
Very good defensively. They played well offensively. They kind of ran out of gas, and they've had that trouble finishing games, which would concern me.
Yeah.
But I definitely think they're a dangerous team. But I still think Bowling Green's the best team.
Oh yeah,
and they played the best schedule.
They have a combination of inside size.
Their point guard's back.
Their point guard is back, so they got ball handling, and as long as you have Tisdale
and Jones,
I mean,
there's nobody in the region that matches up with Jones.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. They can dominate individual matchups in a way that nobody else really can. And when you look at those other 4 teams in that district, it may just come down to which of the best players on those teams play best on that particular night in that tournament.
The way to beat Bowling Green at one time was to press them.
Yeah.
But when their point guard's back, that changes the game a little bit because she handles that better.
Right.
But when your point guard's out, you're very susceptible. No matter how big you are, you're susceptible to be pressured.
Mm-hmm.
And Bowling Green went for about 10 games without the point guard. Now she's back, that's going to really help them. I still think they're the most talented team, the most well-rounded team, but they're vulnerable. When they lost Shelton, I thought they were unbeatable when they had Shelton. I thought they were top 10 in the state.
Yeah.
And now without them, they're not at that level, and they are vulnerable and they are beatable.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I think they're the best team. I think Barron is probably in that. Barron's in the top 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
The loss of Macy Lockhart really hurts them, though Barron is still playing well. And then Metcalf was playing well, but they've gone 2 weeks without playing too.
Yeah.
They're one of the more balanced offensive teams. I mean, they're maybe the only team in the region that I know of that can put 5 people on the floor that can all shoot.
Right.
And that's true. And just how good can they get defensively and rebounding? And then Russell County is always the mystery team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, real quick, back to the Sanaya Shelton when she was at Bowling Green thing. I think the thing that we learned about her, at least at Bowling Green, was they could stick her on your team's best offensive player, and she could pretty much take them out of the game or make it very hard on them, which is what we saw in that regional championship game last year.
True. But she's also another ball handler.
Right, yeah. She's another ball handler. The difference at Warren Central is she's probably being asked to do so much offensively that limits her effectiveness defensively.
Yeah, they don't have a Jones or a Tisdale at Central.
Yeah, for real. So, I mean, that makes things pretty interesting. And now on the Metcalf County front, I mean, they have not played since February 13th when they lost severely to Wayne County. I think it was 68-39 was the final.
Well, and before that, they lost to Cumberland.
Yes.
But you have to understand, they were coming off Metcalf was coming off a 10-day quarantine.
Right.
Where I think they had one practice in before they played even Cumberland.
Right.
And Cumberland had, not the strongest team in the region, but they'd won back-to-back games, and to come back to play them off one day is I knew they could be in trouble. And Wayne County, they've lost to Wayne County twice. Wayne County has a kid that signed with I think they signed with Western or UK. Macy Blevin, she's one of the better players in the region, so in the state. So losing them, especially after that long layoff, was not surprising.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see how this game with Glasgow goes for both these teams tonight.
So the problem that T.J. Thomas is their head coach, T.J. Coffey, and I was talking to her, and so they had the long COVID break and had one practice. So they got those 2 games in, and then she thought, well, I'm going to get a chance to practice and get them back in shape. Then they got hit with the snow.
Right.
So it's timing's everything.
Yeah. Well, and I think we were talking about individuals. Bowling Green has the best collection of talent. But, I mean, the most dynamic offensive team on a good night is probably Metcalfe County because, as you mentioned, I mean, they can just shoot the ball so well. 5
players that can shoot.
Yeah, so, I mean, it'll be interesting. The last time these 2 teams played, I think it went into triple overtime. That was in the regional All-A. And, a lot of things have changed since then, mostly people not getting to play games.
Yep.
So, now on the boys' side in the region, I mean, look, Bowling Green's the team to beat.
Yes.
Period. I mean, they have everybody back from last year. I think most critically, I mean, they have a lot of good players. I mean, Turner Buttrey has signed with Eastern Kentucky. But to me, just Isaiah Mason is the most complete player, I think, in the region. Offensively, defensively, he can handle the ball, shoot the ball, drive, pass. He just can do it all.
Yeah, and they're, in fairness to them, they've, lost in the finals of the region, 3 straight years?
Yeah. Beat Warren Central in the district final 3 straight years, lost to them in the region 3 straight years.
With Isaiah Mason, and, it's been he started since his freshman year. That has stung, and
right.
And same thing with Buttrey. He's started since his freshman year. He's a junior now, so they've all had those tough losses. And you would think, this is probably their year, and they are the heavy favorites. With always you have the COVID consideration.
Yeah, but
they are the favorite, and after that, then it comes down to Warren Central, but
I think Barron's the second best team in the region right now.
That's strong. And who would have said that 6 weeks ago?
No, I mean you wouldn't have, especially if Aiden Niken's not playing.
That's right.
You just would not have said that. But those guys have filled in the gaps, and you talk about the young guys, Aiden Miller and Eli Brooks getting this player experience. It's sort of like we were talking about that with the Glasgow girls in a way. We've got a lot of players getting a lot of experience and getting to do things that probably was not expected to sort of.
They really have been. It's been remarkable, and the guard play has been tremendous.
Yeah,
and so, Barron is. I think it's fair to say they're top 4 for sure. Yeah. Top 4, top 5.
The Allen County folks would probably dispute that, but
I
last outing they beat Allen.
They did. On a game-by-game basis. It's still, I think, Allen has got to be up there. Warren Central's up there. They did not play well against Barron. Maybe Barron had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, they did. They did not shoot the 3 very well against Barron, which is something they've done well.
But the other thing is Warren Central doesn't have the team size that they've had in the past either. No. They just didn't look like that Warren Central team. I know they've coach has been very high on their shooting, though they didn't shoot it well against Barron. But I'm sure, he does a remarkable job getting them ready to play at the end of the year. And the one thing about Central is they won't be intimidated by Bowling Green.
No.
And they won't be intimidated in the region.
No.
And don't forget Clinton. Clinton's still staring at, they're on their own island in Albany right. with only 1 loss.
Well, they have 2 now.
2? Okay.
Yeah, they lost to Russell County.
Well, they have Owensboro Catholic. And the Class A, we were joking off there, is you can't get rid of the Class A. Even after they cancel it, you can't get rid of it.
It's like a roach.
I mean, they're still back.
Stomp it
yeah, they're still back, and they've reformatted the Class A after canceling the Class A, and now the first 2 rounds are going to be played at host schools, and which makes some interesting drives. Owensboro Catholic is going to drive 162 miles to play Clinton County and Albany on a school night.
Yeah, those kids from Owensboro, they're going to wonder if they weren't like in another world by the time they get to Albany.
That is a long drive on a school night to play, and it's like that across the state where teams are willing to drive on a Tuesday or Wednesday, sometimes 100 miles, which is just mind-boggling to me. but they're going to get the tournament in.
Yeah. Speaking of which, real quick, that's a good segue to how the regional tournament is set up. because the first round games will be played at the 4 district winners, and that will begin.
I don't like it, but I understand it this year.
Yeah.
We did it one time earlier, 2001. They went on this notion that we're going to do it this way. Mm-hmm. I'm not a big fan. But I understand this year.
Yeah, 2001, there was no excuse. This year, there is one.
Everybody's playing at the same time. All 4 games are at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, for somebody who likes to cover sports, that's a tough ask. To be honest with you,
2 o'clock for everybody, and for the girls, it's 6 o'clock for everybody at the winter site. So about 4 days later.
Yep. All right, well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we got word yesterday that the WKU Hilltoppers are working on their net ranking. They will be playing at number 6/number 5 Houston, depending on which poll you look at, on Thursday night. Fantastic addition to their schedule here at this point in the season. I mean, I'm sure Houston needs a game, too. I think they've had...
That's the only good that's come out of COVID. Where people just... In the past, you'd have to break 800 contracts and pay fees and things like that in high school and college. I mean, it's just you have these actual contracts. You just can't not play. Mm-hmm. And, who knows? This may stick forever. I don't know. But, yeah, it's a great opportunity. Western needs it's a great opportunity for them. First of all, they hadn't played in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough for them to play. Mm-hmm. But it's national exposure. And who knows? If they knock them off, maybe that gives them a window into the tournament without having to win the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, because right now I think they're listing Joe Lunardi's first 4 out, which is just absurd to me. I just don't. I mean, man, if they don't win the Conference USA tournament this year and they still don't make the NCAA tournament, I'm going to probably have about the same reaction to that as I did the college football playoffs.
Right. Well, this Conference USA has not been the gold mine for the conference. It's a one-bid league. Yeah. And it's unfortunate. But there's so many – the bottom of Conference USA has killed the conference.
Well, there's that, and look, to be fair, WKU lost 2 games in those back-to-backs that they should have won if they really wanted to make a statement within the conference.
True, but that wouldn't get them in anyway.
It wouldn't, but I mean, if you're absolutely dominant in the conference, that probably helps you at least some.
It does. It's the loss to West Virginia when they led most of the game, and then they didn't play well against Louisville. Those, and I said it back then. It bottom at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But Western, in my opinion, is the top. I think they're a top 30 team in the country.
Right. Yeah, I mean, their net ranking is somewhere around 78 or 76, something like that.
Well, yeah, it should be lower. Should be better than that. But that's the conference.
Yeah. And I mean, that's bad for them. And you mentioned their loss to Louisville because it was such a lopsided loss that had to really hurt them.
But this is a good opportunity for them.
It is indeed.
It's exposure, and it's a chance. It's almost you can get into the tournament with this win.
Yeah. And then on the flip side of that, Houston has to look at this situation and say, if we lose this is going to hurt us.
Well, yeah, and the only thing that troubles me with Western is that, again, they've had a lot of these stoppages. Mm-hmm. I will say they've handled these comebacks after stoppages better than Louisville. Louisville's probably the worst team in the country after COVID.
Yeah, well,
they got beat 40 by Wisconsin after a 2-week pause, and they were embarrassed by North Carolina after COVID. Western seems to handle it better.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a tall task to go down to Houston and win.
Yeah, speaking of Louisville, I mean, that loss at North Carolina, that was a devastating loss. I mean, because they just were never in the game, and North Carolina is not that good.
Same thing, though, when they went up to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
They've been off. They've been off 2 weeks, and it's not like they were all just quarantined. They had players who had COVID.
Yeah, right.
And the coach. And so, they probably hadn't had 2 full practices, and it is what it is. Certain teams handle it better than others. Louisville clearly does not handle those layoffs without organized practice as well as others.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I think I know the reason is that Louisville is not all that talented.
Right.
They have to game plan and work and practice because they got to almost get everything they can out of their players to compete, and they just don't have that talent where they can just walk out there and beat a North Carolina without practicing.
Well, and the irony, I think, of that game was that was the first game that the starting five that would have been penciled in at the beginning of the season actually was all there. If I'm
but
mistaken.
hadn't practiced.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, so I mean,
In name only. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit ironic that you finally have the 5 people you thought you were going to have,
right?
And you played that poorly. But as you pointed out, because of the layoff. Meanwhile, I don't know if Kentucky's rounding into shape or not, but they went. They beat Tennessee.
Well, here we go again with Kentucky, and it's either it's now that John Calipari is getting the praise again.
Oh yeah.
He knows what he's doing. Just give him time and so forth. And it's kind of getting old because they are playing. They look like a really good team now.
Yeah.
This Isaiah Jackson he looks like Montel Harold of
Montrezl Harrell.
Montreal. He looks like him, and he's playing tremendous. And Devin Mintz is just becoming a knockdown 3-point shooter. I mean, they look like a formidable team, and you just start to wonder, why does this happen? I mean, it's good that your team improves, but how can you be that talented and play so bad early in the year? And this has happened several times in the last few years where this has happened, and now he's only playing like 7 players. Let's cheer for our hometown kid to get him in the game. He's not playing again.
Yeah. I mean, they look like an utter train wreck for 3 months basically, and now here they are. I mean, it'll be fascinating to see how this season turns
Dangerous
out.
team.
Yep. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.